Every nation operates within a physical container. When you cross a border, you step into a defined geographic space where a specific set of rules and a specific grid of lines immediately lock into place. In Philippine law, this concept is codified under Article 14 of the Civil Code and Article 2 of the Revised Penal Code. This is the principle of generality. It states that penal laws are obligatory upon all who live or sojourn in Philippine territory. To a first-year law student, this creates a straightforward mental model. If your feet are on Philippine soil, you answer to Philippine courts. The reach appears absolute. But that absolute control has a blind spot. Recognized principles of international law carve out specific exceptions that can effectively paralyze the power of those local courts, even when a crime occurs right in their jurisdiction. The physical boundary of the state is an essential baseline. In a globalized legal system, however, establishing where a person is standing is only the beginning of the legal inquiry. We see exactly how this conflict plays out in the 1980s case of Minucher vs. SCALZO. This dispute centers on a clash in Manila between an Iranian national, Khosrow Minucher, and an American DEA agent, Arthur Scalzo. The inciting incident was a buy-bust operation in Pasig City. Philippine narcotic agents, accompanied by Scalzo, raided Minucher's home, arresting him for alleged heroin trafficking. This court transcript details the scale of the operation. Minucher testified that he was met in the street by an American with a drawn, high-powered gun, backed by 30 to 40 armed Filipino soldiers and 6 Americans. The criminal court eventually acquitted Minucher of the drug charges. Following his release, Minucher pivoted. He filed a civil suit for damages against Scalzo, arguing that the DEA agent had fabricated the entire drug trafficking case. Scalzo responded by invoking a specific legal shield. He filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, arguing that as a special agent operating under the United States Embassy, he was entitled to diplomatic immunity. This maneuver forced the Philippine judiciary to address a difficult tension. They had to determine whether a foreign badge grants an individual the power to commit alleged legal wrongs on domestic soil without facing consequence. There is a common misconception about how diplomatic or state immunity actually works. Many assume that claiming immunity places a foreign agent entirely outside the reach of the law. To analyze generality, split the framework into 2 columns: substantive law for the act's legality and procedural jurisdiction for court power. Under substantive law, Philippine rules are unbroken. Illegal acts remain illegal. Immunity operates within procedural jurisdiction, blocking the court from trying the individual. Immunity is not impunity. It does not erase the underlying illegality of a given action. It simply establishes that the local court is the wrong venue to hold that person accountable. In the Minucher case, Scalzo attempted to bypass the local courts entirely. He presented a diplomatic note from the U.S. Embassy to the trial court, expecting that document alone to trigger an automatic dismissal. In a 1992 ruling, the Philippine Supreme Court rejected that automatic dismissal. The court determined that executive claims of immunity, like a diplomatic note, are not blank checks that bypass judicial scrutiny. The court established a clear evidentiary threshold. The judiciary is required to conduct a factual inquiry to verify whether the agent was truly acting in an official capacity, or if they were pursuing personal objectives. A foreign official cannot sidestep a trial simply by flashing a diplomatic testimony. The jurisdictional shield only activates after the court confirms the specific conduct warrants the protection. When the Minucher case was remanded to the trial court for that exact inquiry, the facts showed that Scalzo was operating under official directives from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, coordinating directly with local Philippine law enforcement. This finding allowed the Supreme Court to apply the functional immunity doctrine. As the Case Digest notes, state immunity may extend to an agent of a foreign sovereign, provided the acts are performed in the discharge of official governmental functions. This outcome is anchored in the international law concept of sovereign equality, often expressed by the maxim that equals have no jurisdiction over equals. Translated into practice, this means that because Scalzo was executing authorized duties for the United States, suing him personally was legally indistinguishable from suing the United States government itself. The Philippine courts ultimately relinquished jurisdiction. They did so not as a declaration of Scalzo's innocence, but because domestic courts lack the legal authority to place a foreign sovereign state on trial. This raises a necessary counterfactual. we have to consider what happens if a foreign agent acts outside their assigned directives, committing an unauthorized ultra vires act or a strictly personal offense. The answer limits the scope of the protection. Functional immunity is strictly tied to official duties. It offers zero cover for personal, rogue, or unauthorized actions. The moment an agent steps outside the boundaries of their official capacity, the procedural shield drops. At that point, the generality principle immediately reasserts its grip. The immunity belongs to the sending state, not the individual operative. If an agent breaks the state's rules, they are left to answer to the local courts. For any legal analysis involving jurisdictional challenges and foreign agents, there is a clear heuristic to apply. As outlined in the reviewer, the doctrine concerns immunity from the exercise of local jurisdiction for protected official acts. It does not mean the agent is legally free to commit any act. You must always determine whether the action was performed in an official capacity. Generality remains the governing rule for anyone standing on Philippine territory. International immunity operates simply as a strictly monitored procedural detour.